promise of Complete is to live on a higher and deeper level, and everything in this Complete series is about my journey to do that and helping you to do that, giving you the advice, encouragement and tools on your own journey to complete. Now, one of those tools is the transformation approach, and I'm going to show you two different versions of that in this video to round out this section on transformation, and then we'll move on to talk about value and creativity. The promise of transformation is the ability to move from a current point A in your life and work to a better point B over time. Now, the journey from A to B doesn't happen by magic. It happens over time through actions, determination, luck, help, and those sort of things. Now, although it's not magic, to get different results out of life, we have to think and do things differently, and that's where creativity and the value mindset come in, and we'll talk about those in upcoming videos. If you've been following along the last couple of videos and doing the exercises, you should have a much better idea of what your B is, something you care about and you're passionate about and that aligns with your values. Now, I want to say again, don't be constrained on how you think about B by what your current A is, what your as-is life is. You might be a management consultant and you want to be a filmmaker and say, look, I can't do that. It's not even worth writing it down because that's not what I do for my job. But you're more than just one career. There's many chapters in life, I can attest to that. And I meet tens of people every day that have either changed to a new chapter or in the process of changing. So don't be constrained on what that B is. Make sure you write down what you really want out of all of this. And then later on, we'll talk about tools and techniques of how to get there, even though it might seem like an unlikely possibility from where you sit at the moment. Now, for me, that B throughout my entire career had been the desire to start an entrepreneurial business. I saw myself fundamentally as an entrepreneur, and then somewhere along the way, I got caught up in my career climbing the ladder. I was good at what I was doing. I was traveling the world. I was well paid for it, as I've said before, and it became harder and harder. That B got kind of pushed away to one side. But then through my life circumstances, that B came back with a vengeance, and I realized it was something that I really had to do. I'd feel like a hypocrite and I'd regret deeply if I'd never explored that idea of starting a business. Now, of course, as I've said to you since then, after getting into the business, I've realized the things that I really like is creating experiences for people, either through content, training and events and that sort of thing. And that's where I'm focusing my effort at the moment, rather than just the mechanics of running any business. That B might evolve over time, and that's perfectly normal, and you should be open to that and plan for that B evolving and changing, and you changing your course to meet it over time. So we've talked about B, but where are you at the moment? What's your A with respect to where you want to go? Now, you look at your life across many different dimensions, work, health, relationships, etc. How are those working with respect to where you want to go in future? What skills do you have? Do you have the right networking connections? So the next step really is in the transformation approach is to look at your as-is situation and work out the gap between where you are now and where you want to go in future. And then after that, you'll set a course and use creativity, etc., to work out different ways to get there. Now, in the last video, I gave several tips on thinking about your points A and B. Firstly, B should be exciting. You need to scale it up and think bigger until it's frankly a little bit uncomfortable. Now, if it isn't, you're not going to do anything to achieve it. It's not going to be a big enough goal, an exciting enough goal to fundamentally want to do something different, which is hard over time, and invest the time and energy in doing that. But you also need to think about your A in terms of what I call the burning platform. Quite often the motivation from moving from A to B is not necessarily the good things that you get from moving to B, but actually the bad things that you avoid from staying at A. In fact, our situations don't stay the same, and I can attest to this personally. If you stay stuck in a situation when you're ready to move on and you know that you need to move on, your life actually begins to decline. You're not treading water, actually, you're starting to sink. And that can take the form of anxiety and depression and weight gain and materialistic spending or any sort of strange behavior to compensate for the fact in your mind that you're not the pain, frankly, of not being on the course of where you need to be. What joins A and B is C, logically, is the course that you take to get there. Now, I call it a course rather than just the action steps there, because I liken it to like kind of jumping in a boat or a yacht or something. You don't go straight from A to B, you set out there, and then the wind and forces blow you in one direction or another, you change course, and finally, hopefully you get to your destination. C is that area that we're going to apply things like value thinking and creativity to as well. So again, make sure your B is something that's exciting to you, even though it might not even seem possible based on where you are at the moment at your A. Because you're going to be thinking and doing and acting differently, and that's what's going to help you get from A to B. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts here about how to form your actions and how to execute and organize them. There's a couple of great books, Getting Things Done and Making Ideas Happen, that you can read if you haven't looked at already, that will help you do that. Now there's a second model of transformation that I really want to quickly share with you in this video so it's done before we move on to value, and that's the IPO model, or inputs, process and outputs. Now, in this model of transformation, you think of your life like a machine. You bring certain inputs into it every day, your time, energy, but also your mindset, relationship skills, and so on. That's what you bring to life on a daily basis. The machine of life is your habits and your job and relationships and things that you execute, how you allocate your time and energy in reality every day. And then the O is the outputs or outcomes that you're getting from your life in terms of money and satisfaction and whatever other measures you want to have, what good looks like to you in life. So to get different outcomes from life, we know that we either have to change the inputs then intuitively, or we have to change the machine of our life, and you can do either of both of those. Now what's very interesting here is that it's not a linear relationship between inputs and outputs. You don't, by putting more inputs in necessarily, get more outputs in all the time. Sometimes you can be working really hard and not be very fulfilled and not getting paid very well for it. Conversely, you can be working to your strengths, so you're working a normal amount of hours but getting a tremendous amount of returns from that in terms of money, satisfaction, etc. Now what I'm excited to cover in the next few episodes is how we change up the machinery of our life, our habits and our work or vocation. Most of us exchange our time and energy for money, but how do we change up that relationship? How do we create value in different ways? Either through, for example, creating an asset such as a book or a podcast or a business, etc., or changing up the package of outputs we're looking for from our situation. So even if we've got a job, maybe we actually want to look for more flexibility as an outcome or an output of our work rather than more money. We want to work less and dedicate some of that other time to passion projects or other things that fulfill us more, and create a portfolio of activity in there which overall increases the amount of value that we're getting from our life and the outcomes that we're seeing from our life. Okay, that's it for now. See you again in the next episode where we'll talk about value. Until then, all the best.